Good afternoon. Thank you for joining us. The government has committed ourselves to ensure that childcare spaces for working parents of this province remain viable, and that you're able to have confidence that as families who are returning into the labor market, returning to work, or maybe those that are there today, that you can know that the government is taking action to protect that space for you. Now, you will know that the government as well took action some weeks ago to ensure that childcare operators cannot charge parents for service not rendered, because of course the government closed childcare spaces as a consequence of the COVID-19 outbreak. And so we did that to save you money in the immediate term, but we also recognize that as we look to the medium term, we look to the long term, and with a sense of hope and optimism that our economy will get back on track, we want to make sure people are working. We want to make sure parents are supported. We want to make sure that your kids are safe. And that's why today we're bringing forth a plan that is targeted, that is temporary, and that is timely to support childcare operators to ensure they remain sustainable, to ensure your child's spot in their community childcare is protected and is saved. And that's the basis for our announcement today, where we're going to be supporting all childcare operators through the difficulty of this outbreak. The principles really focus on ensuring that there's targeted support and timely support now when it is needed most. The program delivers additional supports for operating costs for some childcare centers that historically have not been eligible for monies from the province. We'll be ensuring that there'll be some additional supports provided on the operating side on a case-by-case basis to ensure these centers and your child's spaces remain whole through this difficulty. We've also worked with the federal government. My colleague, Minister Ahmed Hussein, who, because of a variety of interventions, was able to include childcare operators in the emergency wage subsidy. That covers 75% of expenses for wages for workers. We're directing our childcare operators to utilize that enhancement, knowing that it'll provide significant monies and some support to help offset those costs for wages. We've also, as you know, the province is a participant and a supporter of the federal provincial wage subsidy program. That program where the province is contributing just north of 37% to help ensure rent is provided and supported for those operators that face difficulty. We've also taken action to reduce red tape, fairly expensive red tape reduction that we think will help reduce costs. We've also waived application fees for childcare renewal. These are part of our plan to reduce the regulatory burden and the red tape burden at a time when I know operators really want to spend less time on paper, more focus on ensuring the viability of their business. We have directed our officials to immediately and quickly get funding to municipal and district service managers, which is the sort of the vehicle that gets our funding out to our community local childcare operators, or licensed childcare operators. As well, we have directed them to work very quickly, knowing that time is of the essence to provide those supports. We believe our plan, in conjunction with our federal municipal partners, will help ensure the sustainability of the sector, but most importantly, it'll ensure your child's spot is preserved. And that's the basis of today's action. We realize that childcare operators every single day are working so hard, and particularly those who have stepped up in the emergency childcare centers. These folks honestly are doing important work, really vital work. They're enabling people on the front lines, in our hospitals, in our long-term care homes, in our seniors' homes, right across our society, enabling them to do their work. And they deserve recognition too. They cannot be lost in this discussion about these folks who take risk themselves and work so hard in the interest of supporting their families, many of whom they've known for many years. So we express gratitude to them. We're going to continue to work in conjunction with the federal government, a very positive collaborative relationship to date, to ensure childcare spaces are protected. And of course, today the focus is really to communicate to the sector, but also to parents that we've got, we are totally committed to protecting you, your child's space over the coming weeks.
Okay, there's several questions that have been asked on via email, and I'll ask them to you. Starting off with Allison Jones, who's the president of the Queen's Park Press Gallery. also with Canadian Press. Does this guarantee that no licensed child care center will be closed during the pandemic because of fixed costs?
Well, it's a guarantee that the governments of all levels are putting money on the table to provide support. I mean, we are providing a rent subsidy working with the federal government, which the province is providing well over a third, to ensure that these operators are viable given the fact that their revenues are down or in some cases, totally eliminated as a consequence of the emergency order. We're providing the wage subsidy as well, the federal government is, but we really do believe that advocacy by provinces, particularly in Ontario, working with Minister Rod Phillips, the finance minister, myself, and others, to encourage the feds to expand the eligibility, that was important. So, what I can tell you is that the government is committed to ensuring that all operators receive support because we want to see them all succeed.
And her second question is there a maximum amount of funding a child care center can receive under this program? Is it
Mm-hmm.
how much money will in total will be set aside for the program by each level of government? It's not clear to me.
It's going to be a case by case basis based on the criteria and the needs of each child care operator. Keep in mind, there's about 20% of operators who historically do not receive government funding, and now they are eligible. So that'll be something we'll be able to provide more specificity about based on the uptake of each operator's, interest in taking the wage subsidy, in taking the rent subsidy, and needing additional operating support from the province. So it's not something that can be known today, but I'm just affirming that collectively governments are working together and investing to help these operators, and these are nonprofit, for profit, wherever they exist, faith-based. We want them to know that we want to see them succeed. We want childcare spaces to exist. It is so consequential to getting parents and families back into the labor market. It's true for any single parent, any parent. Experts will also remind us of the importance of childcare as an enabling, as a prerequisite for labor market participation for women especially. And so for all, we want to see this succeed. This plan, in conjunction with the feds, working with municipal partners, we believe will do that.
What's the time period? Is this from the beginning of into the end of the crisis? When's the time period will be?
We're providing obviously support for the coming months. We're going to be taking this on a need basis, keeping in mind that the federal programs and the federal provincial programs are time limited. Some of them have been extended. For example, the wage subsidy was just most recently extended. So, right now it's looking like a program they'll provide support for the coming months with a critical period of time where that challenge can manifest. But we're going to continue to listen to the sector. We're going to continue to listen to these small business operators with a goal of collaborating and keeping them open through this period. Obviously, we want to see them succeed.
And then this comes from the Toronto Star, Lori Breton and Chris Michelle. Since childcare staff are essential workers on the front line of this pandemic and an increase to the risk of contracting COVID-19, will the provincial $4 pandemic pay top-up be extended to these workers too?
The government has made an announcement on expanding that support to date to a variety of eligible sectors. We'll definitely, we've heard, feedback and advocacy from the sector on this, and we're definitely listening. We can report back in due course.
And continuing, in the cases where landlords don't apply for federal, provincial, or commercial rent subsidies, will the government intervene and force daycare landlords to apply rent subsidies and prohibit evictions?
We're asking for both, all parties involved in the delivery of childcare, particularly when you speak about the landlords and the tenants, to be collaborative. They have, I think, a mutual interest in ensuring the sustainability of those enterprises. The landlord wants a tenant. And so, we will look to them to work that out. But the point is the program is really built upon or predicated on commitment to get that funding out to you. And we know that there's a variety of discussions, largely fruitful, positive discussions happening between those two entities to make sure that the funding flows where it's needed most.
And this comes from Chanel from CP24.
Okay.
So will you have enough money from the daycare subsidy savings that you're achieving now? Will you have enough money to cover the daycare so that they can stay open? Will that money be enough for these subsidies you're announcing today?
With respect to the emergency childcare, we've committed to providing emergency childcare support throughout this outbreak through the emergency order while that remains in place. We do believe that there's been great success. Over 1,500 students now, or youngsters, I should say, are in emergency childcare on an average day in the province of Ontario. We've expanded eligibility starting with first responders, expanding it to include then developmental services and rape shelter staff, those involved in women abuse centers and trafficking. We've expanded it thus thereafter to include those who are truckers, getting our food to market, critical to our supply chain, now including grocery store staff, retirement homes. I mean, these are critical supports for people who are doing, just incredible work with an element of sacrifice for all of them, and we're grateful for them. So we're going to continue to have that support for them throughout the outbreak, so long as the emergency order is in place.
And this comes from Maureen Campbell, Global News, and also copied by Randy Rath of CHCH.
Mm-hmm.
What is being done to ensure that children will be safe when they return to daycare and to school? Will spaces be reduced because the architecture needs to be changed? All the concepts.
Absolutely.
Who wears PPE? Who doesn't?
It's perhaps one of the most important questions our government and our ministry is seized with. How do we enable young people, students for schools, and young children in childcare to return, giving parents and our communities the confidence they deserve that there's going to be a system in place with strict protocols in place that de-risks these circumstances to the extent possible and really ensures the safety of both the student, the child, their families, and of course the staff that work in these centers. So obviously, as an example, in the emergency childcare centers, I'll use that as a case study that we have in working with the Chief Medical Officer of Health of Ontario and local health authorities, built a program that has very high standards. I mean, every student or every person that enters a childcare facility, a child, is tested. That goes for the staffing as well. There is an expectation. Any symptoms, you're sent home. The childcare centers are closed upon any circumstance of COVID-19 within them. They are deep cleaned. They will stay closed for 14 days. There is immediate action that is being taken to ensure safety of these centers. We will not compromise the safety when it comes to our kids. And of course to our staff as well, because they also have families. And our aim is to reduce community spread and really help continue to flatten the curve. We've seen broadly some progress in that respect, and we want to continue that, which is why we're going to expect our operators to implement and keep these emergency centers open in a safe manner, but know that we are enforcing this and we expect absolute compliance.
Okay, and this goes back to a news release that came out earlier today. Ontario enables school board employees to be voluntarily redeployed to congregate care centers. Explain that to
My colleague, Dr. Marilee Fullerton, the Deputy Premier, Christine Elliott, and others have really, expressed the obvious challenge that governments across Canada and really many parts of the industrialized world face, which is a lack of staffing to support, or a need for additional staffing to support vulnerable segments of our population, but especially our seniors. And the Ministry of Education, working in partnership with our federation partners and our trustees associations and boards, is essentially building out a framework that will enable, on a voluntary basis, hardworking staff within our school boards to be redeployed to assist at this critical time. And so today, that emergency order helps enable that. We're not at the point of an announcement today, but it is enabling almost technical action being taken to provide assurance to our federation partners, to all partners, that we are committed to ensuring that their staff could enter safely, could make a difference, could retain their own benefits, and really be able to do so knowing that they're helping the province at a time when we need people, public servants, to rise to the challenge. And the fact that there is some expression of interest by some of the unions, some of the members, some of these folks, I think is really heartening. And so I hope in the coming days we can lock that down and really help support the critical sectors of our province, particularly for seniors and long-term care, where we all have a vested interest. We have loved ones in our lives, seniors, grandparents, and parents, and we want to see them stay healthy and have the support and the compassion of the system that they deserve, especially now while they face social isolation as well.
So let's simplify that. So you want teachers to volunteer, or you will accept volunteers for teachers and other employees, board employees, to go into
Yes.
nursing homes to do what?
It's actually on the support staff side. I mean, the aim is to, on a voluntary basis, permit and encourage staff working within our school board. For example, that could include a janitorial staff or a psychologist or a social worker, those that are providing supports, paraprofessionals, professionals that do this every day, but who may want to go and deploy themselves and to help at a time when we need people to be courageous and brave. And I think it is, it's honestly very inspiring that a lot of people in our province have come back to help. You're seeing nurses return to the front line to telehealth. You're seeing people involved in mental health supports now doing virtual supports after their retirement. I mean, we're really seeing people in small ways make a big difference for a lot of people. And so, if public servants within education are willing and ready to serve and help, we obviously are most grateful. And so, the details of how that can be done will be announced in due course. But I do want to acknowledge the partners involved, because without them, we wouldn't be here today.
And I speak for one particular neighbor with two children. When is school going to go back? How does it look for that?
Yes.
Any update on the schools?
Well, I obviously I know that parents want clarity on this. I just spoke to the Premier of Ontario about this very point, and Doug Ford. I mean, he's very clear. Safety is our most important consideration. We're talking about kids, and he speaks as a father, and I speak as an uncle, but we all want to make sure that we get this right. And I know that parents and educators and staff would like some predictability today of what will June look like. And what I can commit to you is that, as I've said before, we are working very closely with the Chief Medical Officer of Health, with the COVID-19 command table, with the one focus: how do we get students back into schools when it is safe? We're building up protocols for what that could look like, how we're going to have to potentially, reimagine education in some respects to ensure the safety of kids within our schools and our staff within our schools. But right now, the medical advice is that schools cannot open until at least the 29th of May. We are going to respect that, but I'm letting parents know that we will communicate a plan for the month of June, well before that deadline. And I want you to know the focus is going to be on safety while keeping your kids learning at home. Part of the Learn at Home program is really premised on giving educators the opportunity to make a difference through live, online, dynamic engagement where all the kids are in front of each other. That virtual classroom, if you will, that is not just important academically. I think it provides community to these kids. I think that there's a social emotional impact that I think could be measured. These kids want to feel like they're part of something again. And so that's why we really believe in the premise of live, dynamic, virtual learning, and it's why the government has made clear that over the coming weeks, if we continue to have to keep kids home, we're going to continue to expect more and deliver more for our kids through the online learning program.
Is the school classroom going to look different when it returns? Is there going to be 20 to 30 kids in a classroom with a teacher,
Yeah.
or will that be a different atmosphere?
I think we should assume that classes in some form will change, either in expectations and behavior and setup. Those are all fair questions, and they're all considerations of the ministry. I just want parents to know, while we build out that and we design that program, know with confidence that the Premier of Ontario has been unequivocal and he has been clear, and allow me to affirm it as well. We will never compromise the safety of kids. We will ensure that students and staff remain safe. After all, we were the first province in this country to close schools decisively for that reason. So count on us to continue with that position, and know that we're going to continue to work very hard to really raise the bar, to improve student success, to make sure that they're engaged in learning, knowing that not every child is the same, and knowing that some families, are facing acute levels of pressure. For those kids with special education, I want you to know that we are working hard to ensure every single resource within our school boards, our EAs, our psychologists, our psychotherapists, our social workers, that they are unlocked, that they are enabled to work with you and support you. For our parents who are taking on so much responsibility and additional burden of work over the past month or so. So know that we're building the plan, and we hope to communicate to you in short order.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.